Okay, good evening and welcome to our Tuesday Torah class. And I will open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We come before you and ask that you bless this time together. We ask that you give us eyes to see, ears to hear what your word would have us see and hear. We thank you so much for this word of yours. We pray this in Yeshua's name. Amen. All right. So we're in Genesis 33. We're a little thin in here today, huh? I guess Donnie and Lisa aren't here. It just seems empty. So Genesis 33. And this is where Jacob and Esau have their big moment when they're going to meet after 20 years of being not seeing each other. So Jacob has just spent the night wrestling with the man, and so he's a little anxious about this meeting because he's heard that his brother is coming with 400 armed men. So he's thinking that doesn't bode too well. So starting verse 1, says, "And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel, and the two female servants. And he put the servants, that'd be Bilhah and Zilpah, and their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel, and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother." So he's in eye shot of his brother. So as he's approaching, he bows 7 times. And 7 is the number of completion. There's other instances of the leper Naaman. He dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan River and was cured of his leprosy. Can't think of any other instance of 7s offhand. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. So apparently Yahweh is working on the heart of Esau, because it seems like when he set out, he was intent on revenge. But as he got closer and all these gifts of cattle and goats and all this coming to him, it seems like his heart kind of melted. And he was actually glad to see his brothers. It says he fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. But it is interesting about this word kiss. Sometimes the sages believe, was he really genuine? Was it a kiss, a genuine kiss, or was he like like a kiss of death sort of thing? But in the Hebrew text, this word, they put an asterisk above every letter in the word. Did you know this? And from what I read, that's what it's supposed to mean. Like the scribes were uncertain exactly what this kiss actually means. Personally, I think it was genuine. His feelings were genuine. And we'll look at that a little bit later. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom Elohim has graciously given your servant." So you notice that Jacob is being very humble here. He's referring to Esau himself as Esau's servant. Then the servants drew near, and they and their children bowed down. So the first group comes up, and they all bow. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. So it is interesting that in the case of Joseph and Rachel, they mentioned Joseph first as if he was ahead of his mom, whereas the other children were kind of, it was the mothers, then the children kind of behind. But so that kind of points to his character, that he's going to be a man who is going to stand out and he's going to step forward. So he's not afraid to step forward and be before his mother in bowing down to Esau. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company that I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." So he just came off an experience where he literally did see the face of God, and he lived. And now he's confronted with meeting his brother, and he's not sure what his brother's going to do. And when it turns out that Esau is happy to see him, it's like, this is like seeing the face of God, because you accept me, and I did not die. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because Elohim has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. Thus he urged him, and he took it. And Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." And Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Well, he actually never intended to go to Seir, so he's being a little bit deceptive, I guess. So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place called Succoth. So it's almost a kind of the whole meeting's kind of anticlimactic, wouldn't you say? Like nothing happened, nothing bad happened. It led up to all this, and Esau was happy to see him, which is a good thing. Yeah, time heals all wounds. And Jake, he never went to Seir, no. Well, he goes, in the next verse 18 says, Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem. So he went to Shechem. Which is in the land of Canaan on the way from Paddan Aram, and he camped before the city. We'll wait. Mark has a comment here. He's getting his microphone.
My comment is Jacob's exile is ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to equate this to the northern kingdom and the exile. So as his exile is ending, he's got to settle up accounts with his brother
Right.
before he can come in. And I wonder if this is a prophetic picture for us of what's to come, that we're going to have to settle accounts, not only with our brother Judah, we may have to settle up accounts with those other brothers that are even distant beyond that.
Yeah, like Edomite, Ishmaelite, that kind of thing, yeah.
What proof do you have for thinking he might have never intended to go to
Well,
Seir?
He tells him, I will come to you in Seir, and then he goes on to Sukkot or Shechem.
Don't you think he could have been traveling long intending to go to Seir and
He could
then
have,
decided that
but he kind of
maybe we should pack over here?
So
kind of backtracked though.
here's another interesting thing. He returns out of exile and he goes to Shechem. And what does he do? What's if he's building booths, what time of the year is this? This is Sukkot, right?
Right.
So if we're, and when you look at when the Israelites came into the land, after they did what they did with Jericho, where did they go? Shechem.
Mm-hmm.
So are those pictures that we're going to have to go to Shechem, exiles that return end up going to Shechem. What's interesting, because if I'm an exile, I went to Shechem. I spent some time in Shechem.
Yeah.
And so it's really a very interesting thing. But and could this return be where you're coming in and you're going to end up doing booths, which is what one of those prophets say, that all that do not come and celebrate the Feast of Booths won't have any rain on their land. So it's kind of interesting stuff.
Yeah. Maybe our first Sukkot will be in Shechem.
It does say that he built booths for his cattle,
Right.
and he built himself a house.
Yeah.
Not that what Mark is saying isn't true. It have been both.
So it's hard to say if he built what kind of house it was. It was because he from here he moved on, so whether it was a permanent dwelling or not. Anyways, I found a couple articles dealing with Esau, because I wanted to kind of look at his story a little more. This one is called, it's rather short, so it's Why Did Isaac Love Esau? So this is by a Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Have you ever heard of him? Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. So it says, even before they were born, Jacob and Esau struggled in the womb. They were destined, it seemed, to be eternal adversaries. Not only were they different in character and appearance, they also held different places in their parents' affections. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Esau. We know why Rebekah loved Jacob. Before the twins were born, the pains Rebekah felt were so great that she went to inquire of Yahuwah. This is what she was told: 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. It seems as if Elohim were saying that the younger would prevail and carry forward the burden of history. So it was the younger Jacob whom she loved. But why, in that case, did Isaac love Esau? Did he not know about Rebekah's oracle? Had she not told him about it? Besides, he did not know that Esau, or did he not know that Esau was wild and impetuous? Can we really take literally the proposition that Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for wild game, as if his affections were determined by his stomach, by the fact that the elder son brought him food he loved? Surely not, when the very future of the covenant was at stake. So he goes on to talk about how the common, this is like the common view that because that's basically what's written, is that he liked wild game, and he loved when Esau would make him, these tasty meals. So the classic answer is that Isaac loved Esau because he simply did not know who or what Esau was. But there is another possible answer, that Isaac loved Esau precisely because he did know what Esau was. In the early 20th century, someone brought to the great Rabbi Avraham Yitzhak Kook, and that is his name, Kook, the following dilemma. He had given his son, or someone brought him this dilemma. This man who came to this rabbi, he had given his son a good Jewish education. He had always kept the commands at home. Now, however, the son had drifted far from Judaism. He no longer kept the commandments. He did not even identify as a Jew. What should the father do? Did you love him when he was religious? Asked Rav Kook. Of course, replied the father. Well then, Rav Kook replied, now love him even more. Sometimes love can do what rebuke cannot. It may be that the Torah is telling us that Isaac was anything but blind as to his elder son's true nature. But if you have two children, one well-behaved, the other liable to turn out badly, to whom should you devote greater attention? With whom should you spend more time? Good question. Maybe that Isaac loved Esau not blindly, but with open eyes, knowing that there would be times when his elder son would give him grief, but knowing too that the moral responsibility of parenthood demands that we do not despair of or disown a wayward son. Did Isaac's love have an effect on Esau? Yes and no. It is clear that there is a special bond of connection between Esau and Isaac. This was recognized by the sages. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, no man ever honored his father as I honored my father, but I found that Esau honored his father even more. Rabbi Shimon derives this from the fact that usually people serve their parents wearing ordinary clothes while they reserve their best for going out. Esau, however, had kept his best clothes in readiness to serve his father the food he had gone out to hunt. That is why Jacob was able to wear them while Esau was still out hunting. Remember how Jacob got his fine clothes? We find much later in the Torah that Elohim forbids the Israelites to wage war against Esau's descendants. He tells Moses, give the people these orders. You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. They will be afraid of you, but be very careful. Do not provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. I have given Esau the hill country of Seir as his own. And later still, Moses commands the Israelites, do not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. The sages saw these provisions as an enduring reward to Esau for the way he honored his father. So was Isaac right or wrong to love Esau? Esau reciprocated the love, but remained Esau, the hunter, the man of the field, not the man to carry forward the demanding covenant with the invisible Elohim and the spiritual sacrifices it called for. Not all children follow the path of their parents. If it was Isaac's intent that Esau should do so, he failed. But there are some failures that are honorable. Loving your children, whatever they become, is one, for surely that is how Elohim loves us. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And pardon me? And this other one kind of relates to the chapter we've been reading here, chapter 33. Well, it gets to it. It's a little bit longer, but it is interesting. This one's called, Was Jacob Right to Take the Esau's Blessing? Go ahead.
If you think about what they're bringing forth in what you read, if a father knew that one of his sons were going to be not part of the family, were going to distance himself, you knew that they were going to lose their status, all this bad stuff was going to come, you would probably spend time trying to sow seeds of life and encouragement into them to prevent that from happening, to trying to hope that maybe I can do this, or I may not be with him. Maybe he leaves way before I even pass. So yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons he spent so much time with him. Yeah.
The second one is called, was Jacob right to take Esau's blessing? Was Jacob right to take Esau's blessing in disguise? Was he right to deceive his father and to take from his brother the blessing Isaac sought to give him? Was Rebekah right in conceiving the plan in the first place and encouraging Jacob to carry it out? These are fundamental questions. What is at stake is not just biblical interpretation, but the moral life itself. How we read a text shapes the kind of person we become. Here is one way of interpreting the narrative. Rebekah was right to propose what she did, and Jacob was right to do it. Rebekah knew that it would be Jacob, not Esau, who would continue the covenant and carry the mission of Abraham into the future. She knew this on two separate grounds. First, she had heard it from Elohim himself in the oracle she received before the twins were born. 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the younger. Esau was the elder, Jacob the younger. Therefore, it was Jacob who would emerge with greater strength, Jacob who was chosen by God. And that is the case. Jacob was chosen. Second, she had to watch the twins grow up. She knew that Esau was a hunter, a man of violence. She had seen that he was impetuous, mercurial, a man of impulse, not calm reflection. She had seen him sell his birthright for a bowl of soup. She had watched while he ate, drank, rose, and left. So Esau despised his birthright. No one who despises his birthright can be the trusted guardian of a covenant intended for eternity. Third, just before the episode of the blessing, where we read, when Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, also Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. This too was evidence of Esau's failure to understand what the covenant requires. By marrying a Hittite woman, he proved himself indifferent both to the feelings of his parents and to the self-restraint and the choice of marriage partner that was essential to being Abraham's heir. The blessing had to go to Jacob. If you had 2 sons, one indifferent to art, the other an art lover, an aesthetic, to whom would you leave the Rembrandt that has been part of the family heritage for generations? And if Isaac did not understand the true nature of his sons, if he was blind, not only physically but psychologically, might it not be necessary to deceive him? He was by now old, and if Rebekah had failed in the early years to get him to see the true nature of their children, was it likely that she could do so now? This was, after all, not just a matter of relationship within the family. It was about Elohim and destiny and spiritual vocation. It was about the future of an entire people, since Elohim had repeatedly told Abraham that he would be the ancestor of a great nation who would be a blessing to humanity as a whole. And if Rebekah was right, then Jacob was right to follow her instructions. This is the woman who Abraham's servant had chosen to be the wife of his master's son, because she was kind, because at the well she had given water to a stranger and to his camels also. Rebekah was not Lady Macbeth acting out of favoritism or ambition. She was an embodiment of loving kindness. And if she had no other way of ensuring that the blessing went to one who would cherish it and live it, then in this case the end justified the means. This was one way of reading the story and is taken by many of the commentators. And I would admit this is kind of how I viewed the story. However, it is not the only way. Consider, for example, the scene that transpired immediately after Jacob left his father. Esau returned from hunting and brought Isaac the food he had requested. And then we read this. Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who is it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry, and said to his father, bless me too, my father." But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau said, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing." Then he asked, "Haven't you reserved any blessing for me?" It is impossible to read Genesis 27, the text as it stands without commentary, and not to feel sympathy for Isaac and Esau rather than Rebekah and Jacob. The Torah is sparing in its use of emotion. It is completely silent, for example, on the feelings of Abraham and Isaac as they journey together toward the trial of the binding. Phrases like trembled violently and burst out with a loud and bitter cry cannot but deeply affect us. Here is an old man who has been deceived by his younger son, and a young man, Esau, who feels cheated out of what was rightfully his. The emotions triggered by this scene will long stay with us. Then consider the consequences. Jacob had to stay away from home for more than 20 years, fearing of his life. He then suffered an almost identical deceit practiced against him by Laban when he substituted Leah for Rachel. When Jacob cried out, "Why did you deceive me?" Laban replied, "It is not done in our place." Place the younger before the elder. Not only the act, but even the words imply a punishment, measure for measure. Deceit of which Jacob accuses Laban is the very word Isaac uses about Jacob. Laban's reply sounds like a virtually explicit reference to what Jacob has done, as if to say, we do not do in our place what you have just done in yours. That's pretty harsh. The result of Laban's deception brought grief to the rest of Jacob's life. There was tension between Leah and Rachel. There was hatred between their children. Jacob was deceived yet again, this time by his sons, when they brought him Joseph's blood-stained robe. Another deception of a father by his children involving the use of clothes. The result was that Jacob was deprived of the company of his most beloved son for 22 years, just as Isaac was of Jacob. Asked by Pharaoh how old he was, Jacob replied, "Few and evil have been the years of my life." He is the only figure in the Torah to make a remark like this. It is hard not to read the text as a precise statement of the principle of measure for measure. As you have done to others, so will others do to you. The deception brought all concerned great grief, and this persisted into the next generation. Isaac fully understood the nature of his two sons. He loved Esau, but this did not blind him to the fact that Jacob would be the heir of the covenant. Therefore, Isaac prepared two sets of blessings, one for Esau, the other for Jacob. He blessed Esau with the gifts he felt he would appreciate. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine, that is, wealth. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you, that is, power. These are not the covenantal blessings. So in essence, and I never really realized this before I read this, is that the blessing that Isaac gave to Jacob, he thought he was giving that blessing to Esau. So that should have been Esau's blessings. You know, basically the dew of the earth, nations will serve you, that kind of thing. That wasn't the same as the covenantal blessing. And I never really actually realized that before. And it is kind of striking that that blessing that he gave to Jacob, he prepared it for Esau. And Jacob went in and took it. So he got both blessings. He should only had the one. So the covenantal blessing that God had given Abraham and Isaac were completely different. They were about children and a land. It is this blessing that Isaac gave later to Jacob before he left home. May Elohim bless you and make you fruitful and increase your number until you become a community of peoples, that is, children. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God Elohim gave to Abraham, that is, land. This was the blessing Isaac had intended for Jacob all along. There was no need for deceit and disguise. So it is kind of interesting that they concocted this whole thing, and it seems like Jacob fully intended to give the covenantal blessing to Jacob all along. And in the meantime, he got the other blessing, which he shouldn't have got, apparently. I don't know. What do you guys think of that? Does it kind of puts a new spin on it? Jacob eventually came to understand all this, perhaps during the wrestling match with the man during the night before his meeting with Esau. So now we're coming to where we're in the story now, after their long estrangement. What happened at that meeting is incomprehensible unless we understand that Jacob was giving back to Esau the blessings he had wrongly taken from him. The massive gift of sheep, cattle, and other livestock represented heaven's dew and earth's richness, that is, wealth. The fact that Jacob bowed down 7 times to Esau was his way of fulfilling the words, "May the sons of your mother bow down to you," that is, power. Jacob gave the blessing back. Indeed, he said so explicitly. He said to Esau, "Please accept the blessing that was brought to you, for Elohim has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." On this reading of the story, Rebekah and Jacob made a mistake, a forgivable one, an understandable one, but a mistake nonetheless. The blessing Isaac was about to give Esau was not the blessing of Abraham. He intended to give Esau a blessing appropriate to him. In so doing, he was acting on the basis of precedent. God had blessed Ishmael with the words, "I will make him into a great nation." This was the fulfillment of a promise God had given Abraham many years before when he told him that it would be Isaac, not Ishmael, who would continue the covenant. Abraham said to Elohim, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." And Elohim said, "Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him in an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will increase greatly his number. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation." Isaac surely knew this because according to the Midrashic tradition, he and Ishmael were reconciled later in life. We see them standing together at Abraham's grave. It may be that this was a fact that Rebekah did not know. She associated blessing with covenant. She may have been unaware that Abraham wanted Ishmael blessed, even though he would not inherit the covenant, and that God had acceded to his covenant. If so, then it is possible all 4 people acted rightly as they understood the situation, yet still tragedy occurred. Isaac was right to wish Esau blessed as Abraham sought for Ishmael. Esau acted honorably toward his father. Rebekah sought to safeguard the future of the covenant. Jacob felt qualms but did what his mother said, knowing she would have not proposed deceit without a strong moral reason for doing so. Do we have here a story with 2 possible interpretations? Perhaps, but that is not the best way of describing it. What we have here, and there are many examples in Genesis, is a story we understand one way the first time we hear it, and a different way once we have discovered and reflected on all that happened later. It is only after we have read about the fate of Jacob and Laban's house, the tension between Leah and Rachel, and the animosity between Joseph and his brothers that we can go back and read Genesis 27, the chapter of the blessing, in a new light and with greater depth. There is such a thing as an honest mistake, and it is mark of Jacob's greatness that he recognized it and made amends to Esau. In the great encounter 22 years later, the estranged brothers met, embrace, part as friends, and go their separate ways. But first, Jacob had to wrestle with a man. This says angel, but we know it's not an angel, it's a man. That is how the moral life is. We learn by making mistakes. We live life forward, but we understand it only looking back. Only then do we see the wrong turns we inadvertently made. This discovery is sometimes our greatest moment of moral truth. For each of us, there is a blessing that is ours. That was true not just of Isaac, but also Ishmael, not just Jacob, but also Esau. The moral code could not be more powerful. Never seek your brother's blessing. Be content with your own. So, I thought that was interesting when I came upon that. I was just looking for more things about Esau, and I found that, and I found it to be very thought-provoking, and it kind of made me think, even change my mindset about the whole blessing idea, even the blessing that, yeah. Yeah. Did you have a comment, Pat?
Yes, my preconceived idea was probably like most of yours, that they were wrong in being deceitful and so forth. But then I realized that Yahweh always seems to choose to do what he's going to do through man. He seeks for a man to accomplish whatever is on his heart. He could just instantaneously do whatever he wanted done, but he used to do. And even if they falter and don't do it by any means as adequately as Yah could himself, he still accepts that. So I can see that this is a possible interpretation,
Yeah.
correct? Only from that standpoint.
And Esau was blessed. He became a great nation in his own right. And eventually possibly he and Jacob were reconciled at when they buried their father together. Yeah.
Nature of a father and son, most any situation is, you hang around and do things with and teach somebody who's interested in what you're interested in. So he could have just been close to Esau because he was an outdoorsman and his dad was an outdoor man. So that's understandable, if nothing else were.
Yeah. Well, I think like the first article said, he saw the faults in Esau, and it's like when Yeshua said, "I didn't come for the well, I came for the sick." So he could see that Jacob. Oh, did you have a question? No. He could see that Jacob would be the one who to fulfill the covenant, but he still loved his son, Esau. It's the same with Abraham and Ishmael. I mean, Abraham loved Ishmael because he was his son, and when he had to put him out, it grieved him. So
He had a lot more years in between first son and second son in that situation to get acquainted with him.
Oh, you're talking about Ishmael and, yeah. Case of Jacob and Esau, what, minutes? Who knows? Okay, verse 18. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Yisrael, which means God, the God of Israel. So he buys a plot of land where he pitched his tent. So this is one of three instances where a Hebrew buys a parcel of land in the land, thereby having deed to this, at least this particular land. The other two, you guys know what the other two would be? Yeah, Abraham, Machpelah. And the other would be when David bought the threshing floor from Araunah, the Jebusite. He bought two? Oh, okay. Is that Mount Moriah where the Jebusite, Araunah? Right. Yeah. So, isn't the cave, the field of Machpelah, Hebron? Yeah. So those are three significant places in Israel. Hebron, yeah, Hebron, Shechem in the north, and then Jerusalem in the middle. Yep. All right. Well, let us continue. Chapter 34 involves the defiling of Dinah, the sister.
Interesting commentary that talks about when you look at in verse 14 of 33, he's saying, please let you pass on. And he says, let me go according to the pace of the children. So the commentary says that these kids of Jacob's are very young.
Yeah.
So we get down here to 34, and now they're adults.
So there must
So
be
there's
some time.
a time pass
Yeah,
between
that's what I
there and
thought.
here, a pretty good distance of time. And so he's obviously been living in Shechem for quite some time.
Yeah. Yeah, so they just came from Laban after 20 years. He didn't actually start having children until he was there 7 years, so they've been born in the last 13 years. So Reuben would have been 13 or 14. He'd have been the oldest, and Joseph would have been, yeah. So probably, yeah, I would agree with you. I thought of that myself, that probably a little significant amount of time is passing between these two stories. He's probably, maybe that's why he built a house, maybe he was there for a while. All right, verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and lay with her and humiliated her. So basically, he raped her, right? He humiliated her, took her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give us your daughters. Give your daughters to us. Take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you." Sounds like a slippery slope. Dwell and trade in it and get property in it. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give you. Ask me for as great a bride price and gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife." The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because they had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone." Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem, and the young man did not delay to do the thing because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of the city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us, to become one people. Then every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. So apparently they thought that was a pretty good idea.
So the problem is, what would make, I mean, this is your land. And by the way, I was wondering, when Abraham came through this area many, many years before, it never mentioned these people.
Right.
So maybe these people came in between that time.
Yeah.
So my question is, what in the world would be so enticing? I mean, they're coming into your area. What would be so enticing that all the men would say, "Yeah, let us all get circumcised"?
Yeah.
I mean, you would have to have something either the women are extremely beautiful, or the king, or Shechem's dad is ruling with a very heavy hand, saying, "No, you're all going to do this for the sake of my son." Something is causing them to want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think that somebody's going, "I don't know if I want to get circumcised. What's this about?"
Well, it does say that Shechem, he was the most honored of all his father's house. So maybe, the son, if the son wanted something, the father's going to give it to him. Yeah. And he was,
Are
as they
these
say-
all the sons of Esau?
no, these are, I think they say they're Hivites. Yes, Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, which I believe is one of the Canaanite tribes that is spoken about in other places.
But these brothers that put that stipulation up, weren't they Esau's sons? They were brothers to Dinah?
Oh, the brothers? Yeah, they were the sons of Jacob. They were brothers to Dinah.
Jacob, but they weren't Esau.
No.
Okay.
No, these were the sons of Jacob. And probably, I would imagine, Reuben and Simeon were Simeon and Levi were the main culprits in the whole story.
Ward, was it you that was telling me about some connection with the Hivites? Was it you that was telling me about a Hivite connection? So he's got an interesting thought about a connection to these Hivites.
So it's something I'm still researching because it's a little confusing, but you have the Hivites and you have the Horites, okay? And I'm still trying to determine if these two words are related or what, but these groups, or at least one of them, were the Mycenaean Greeks. They after they were in around Mount Hermon and the areas they were in, after that, many of them migrated to Greece and became the Greeks, the Mycenaean Greeks. And they took with them everything, of course, all their knowledge from Mount Hermon and all the lore, so that in Greece, Mount Olympus is basically Mount Hermon.
Mm-hmm.
They just took everything with them to Greece, and that became the Greek mythology.
Interesting. Yeah. I thought the Horites intermingled with the Edomites. Is that true? Didn't the Horites intermingle with the Edomites? That was horrible. I like that joke. So, so all these guys get circumcised, whether they liked it or not. On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure and killed all the males. That's pretty intense. Go in and slaughter every last living male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. I do find it interesting that she's already living in his house before the marriage has been conducted.
It's probably a miracle because two men couldn't, under normal circumstances, kill all those men, even
Right.
if they are sore. They could fight other ways besides whatever.
Yeah.
So
And
Well,
do you think she became with child from that incident?
if she had a child,
If she became pregnant from
Oh.
that first incident?
it's possible. Yeah. Well, as far as that goes, I think they just went in stealthily and just started cutting throats, going from man to man. And by the time somebody realized what was happening, I don't know, it's kind of hard to move when you're just been circumcised. I wouldn't know because I don't remember. I do remember I had a vasectomy and I was sore for quite a while and it was hard to move. And if somebody came at me and wanted to slice my throat, I probably wouldn't have been able to do anything. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and the field, all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured and plundered. So I wondered where Jacob's sons got their wives, because probably by this time in the story, they're older. They're probably by now in their 20s. And I would wonder, where did they get their wives? Because there were no other family members around, no other Israelites. So maybe this is where they got their wives. But does that mean they're all married to Canaanite women? I don't know. But they took everything. So after Simeon and Levi did the deed, then the other brothers went in and did the plundering. Apparently no problem with that. Or they didn't feel, any that there was any problem as far as like being shameful or something.
It says that they took all of their wives and their little ones. So I'm reading on. I can't remember. Evidently, all of these women and children became part of the nation now.
I would think so. And I'm wondering if maybe this is how they got their wives.
So if Ward's thing is correct, Hebrews have a little bit of Greek in them. A little bit of Egyptian, a little bit of Greek,
Yeah.
a little bit of Midian, a little bit of surrounding nations mixed in there.
Yeah. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me, attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" And apparently Jacob didn't have a reply to that. Go ahead.
Okay, to go back to this thing about the Greeks, I found my note on this. So, yeah, it was the Hivites of the Old Testament were actually Greeks. The Hebrew Hivi derives from Hiyawa, a Luwian South Anatolian form of Ahiyawa. The Hittites' name for the Archaeans, who were the Mycenaean Greeks in Homer's epic poems Iliad and Odyssey. So the short form equation is Hivites equals Hiyawa equals Ahiyawa equals Achaean, which equals the Greek. So that's the derivation of the Hivites.
So they, descendants of Hivites went to Greece and became the Mycenaean. Mycenaean, that was like the pre-classical period of Greece, I believe. I don't know.
It says, I also have, this in turn helps to explain the presence of the Anakim in Canaan in the days of Joshua, about 200 years before the Trojan War. The name Anakim derives from Anax, a Greek noun with four meanings. The gods, Homeric heroes, the master of the house, and shipmasters. The Anakim, who were probably mentioned in Egyptian texts about 500 years before Joshua, and the Israelites chased them out of the hill country of Canaan, were a hereditary ruling class, a proto-Greek aristocracy in Canaan.
So do you think like when Israel was going into the land, a lot of these people who were living there kind of dispersed and went to other places?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe
a lot
Is
of
it
them
you said
forced,
that's when the
they
Hivites went
fled,
to?
and there's probably multiple migrations, but
Yeah.
when they had to leave, they had to leave, and that's interesting. Then how all this migration out took all this history and knowledge and everything out, and took on these different forms.
yeah,
That's why you've got all these stories all over the world
that are the same.
that are the same.
Even Native American cultures. Yeah. I'm sure some of them probably ended up here. I mean, there's a lot of fables about the natives, their encounters with giants and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, even on if you read the logs of the early settlers that came down the East Coast, in the early days, there was a group of settlers that came across Jekyll Island, which I believe is off the coast of South Carolina, and there was a tribe of Canaanites living on that island.
Really?
And they said, yeah, and these settlers wrote, they were there for a day, and in the middle of the night they snuck out because these guys were so violent and so scary that it just scared them to death, and they snuck out in the middle of the night and headed back. They actually ended up down in Florida, but yeah, they didn't hang around.
That's interesting.
But there is a museum for this island because it was purchased by the Rockefellers. Okay,
Yeah.
this is where they did the plans for the Federal Reserve.
There's some nefarious things going
But
on.
in the
there.
museum, there's this whole story about the curator. There's a gentleman back many years ago, probably a couple decades ago, that visited the curator of the museum, and they had all this information about the pictures and drawings like in the information from these settlers' notebooks and everything. And this guy that came was, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was from Europe. And he had been doing a lot of research. And when he met the curator and he looked at all this, he said, these weapons, these bows and these spears and everything they have, they're all Canaanite. I recognize them. And the curator didn't know anything about it. And he said, really? And, the curator looked into it and he said, oh, it looks like you're right. Yeah, he had no idea that this was a Canaanite tribe.
Wow. So what year was that on Jekyll Island when they found these Canaanites?
Oh, man, that was off the top of my head, I think it was 1700s.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
I wonder what became of them. They probably...
Yeah, I think as waves and waves of settlers came through, it's like a lot of places, they kind of faded away.
Yeah. So Simeon and Levi, we know we'll see later in Jacob's blessing, that he doesn't lift them up for their violence. And Simeon kind of talking about how people migrated. There is a belief that Simeon actually became I believe it's the Spartans, that they migrated to Greece while they were still in Egypt, which might explain possibly why their numbers fell so drastically during the 40 years in the wilderness. And then Levi, they were the tribe that became the priestly tribe, but during the golden calf incident, when Moses said, who's on the side of Yahuwah, the tribe of Levi stood up and executed 3,000 of their brothers. So it's a very interesting story. And once again, we can say, were they right in what they did, or was that a little too over the top? Anyways, that's the hour, so let me pray, and then we'll be dismissed. Father God, we thank you so much for just looking into your word, looking into the life of Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And just thank you so much for the story of Jacob and Esau, and just so many layers to it. And Father, so much we can learn from it. And Father, we just thank you so much for your word. We ask that you bless us as we go on our way home. In Yeshua's name, amen. Should we announce the Zoom thing, or are we done? Should we announce the Zoom thing next week? Did you already? Oh, okay. So next week, we're going to start doing this in a Zoom format. And yeah, if you're already on Zoom, if you're not, send an email to Mark at livingmessiah.com, and he'll get you hooked up. So, and I'll still be leading the class from the Zoom. Okay, thank you.